You know, I've been in policing now for 44 years, and I've seen more than my share of violence and tragedy, and I get tired too, I really do. But then I look at you, I look at Dorothy, I look at people in this room, and if you haven't given up, then I have no excuse to give up. Because we all have to hold each other up in order to make our streets safer so that no one else has to go through this. You know, one thing we should do is perhaps set a goal for ourselves. And maybe that goal ought to be that Mothers in Charge has no new members in that organization. Because, you know, this is an organization that you don't want to see grow. I mean, it's got to stop. But in order for it to stop, it's going to take everybody working together to make the difference. And we have to hold each other accountable. We'll start with the police. We have a responsibility to protect our communities the best we can. When we have elected officials, like what happened in Washington, D.C. a month ago, when every American should have been embarrassed of what happened in the Senate a month ago. They couldn't even pass legislation for background checks to buy guns. When you stop and think about it, there was a lot of attention paid to Sandy Hook, and rightfully so. I mean, you get 20 babies slaughtered like that, attention should be paid to that. But we have a Sandy Hook happening all the time in cities across America. And nobody's, you know, and we get to a point where we get desensitized to, oh, just another homicide. We look to see the address first and who it is that got killed before we decide whether or not we're going to get outraged about it. You can't cherry pick your outrage. Every life has value. Somebody lost somebody. And it doesn't matter what they may have been doing at the time they got killed. Maybe they did have a criminal record. Nobody had the right to kill them. When you really think about, and we talk about those parents that weren't there when the child was being sentenced. You had them, you got to raise them. And if you've got a situation, you know, back in the 80s, when I remember when I was working narcotics back in Chicago, and we had this epidemic of crack cocaine, and the big thing was crack babies. Oh, we're having all these crack babies, and this, that, and the other, and blah, blah, blah. How old do you think those babies are now? What kind of support did they get when they were coming up through school and may have had some educational deficiencies and issues because of the circumstance that they were in? Did they get any help for that? Did anybody try to turn it around and try to do something for these kids? What about the entertainers that we give billions of dollars to get on stage and talk about and glorify domestic violence and glorify homicide? We were in the car the other day and pulled up to the corner, and guy had his window down, blasting his music loud, and you know what the lyrics are talking about? Body bags and murder. We're poisoning the minds of our young people. These are kids that have not yet grown up and know the difference between reality and fantasy. They're already, in some cases, trapped in circumstances of violence, so they already have this heightened sense of fear. They feel like they got to have a gun to protect themselves. And then they get up in the morning, and instead of listening to some easy music, some jazz or something, you're listening to folks talking about killing each other and all, and then we wonder why they're going crazy. Yet we buy the CDs, we do all the things, and we support it. It's a multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry, folks. It's enough. But until we actually come up with a plan and deal with all the different moving parts that affect our streets of our city and the violence that takes place, it's not going to change. And we're going to have this every year, and I guarantee you, you will have new members every year, because it's not going to fix itself. There's no excuse for our kids to graduate from high school with 5th grade reading levels. How the heck they get out of 5th grade? There's no reason why a kid could go into the penitentiary that may have a 3rd grade education, come out 10 years later and still got a 3rd grade education. Why can't he come out with a bachelor's degree? Why can't we really, truly do the things we need to do to rehabilitate so they can assimilate back in society. And once they've paid their debt to society, have full citizenship, be able to go vote, be able to do all the things that everybody else takes for granted. You can't just throw populations away. I'm not worried about going out of business because there'll always be some knucklehead who don't get the message is going to be there and we're going to have to deal with it. But there's no reason why police budgets have to grow every single year, why prison budgets have to grow every single year. They say they do studies where in 3rd grade they can plan ahead and project how many prisons they're going to need based on the number of young men of color in the 3rd grade. Well, if you can do that, then why the hell can't you decide how many colleges you need to build when that same child is in 3rd grade? Elected officials aren't going to turn this around. Police aren't going to turn this around. None of the radio personalities are going to turn around by themselves. It's going to take all of us together. But most importantly, it's going to take you, because you are the voice that everybody has to pay attention to. But it has to be a collective voice in order to be heard. Enough is enough is enough. I am tired of going to crime scenes. I'm tired of having to deal with notifying families, burying police officers. I've been here 5.5 years. I've buried 7 police officers in 5.5 years. It's crazy. It's crazy. But I want to thank Mothers in Charge. I want to thank you for what you do, because you make a difference. You heal broken hearts. And there's no greater calling than that, Dorothy. So it may have started with a tragedy, but it was for a reason, because you have given life back to so many people. And I thank you for that.